All right, so folks, if you could let me know whether you see through my headset.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Hi, Charlie. I'm gonna move you
Hi.
up to your eye level, and you may want to move me up. And if you don't remember, it's the middle finger button
Got
on,
it.
on the other side. Perfect. All right, are we ready to get started?
Yes, I think so.
Excellent. Awesome. So I don't know. You probably can't see me very well, but you can see Charlie. But maybe I'll just turn to the screen so you can all see me on my camera. I think I'm turned to the right way. But hi, everyone. My name is Dave Maass. I am Director of Investigations at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. My role at EFF is to lead large-scale investigations into law enforcement use of surveillance technology. So that includes the types of technology that local police and federal agencies use in the United States, but it also involves looking at the technology along the US-Mexico border. Now, for the last couple of years, we've been trying to map out where the infrastructure is for the so-called virtual wall in the United States along the US-Mexico border. So this includes surveillance towers, license plate readers, and a whole range of other aerial and ground-based technology. And we've been trying to figure out along the way on how to do this, how to find them. Some of the things that we've been able to do is grab environmental assessments and procurement documents and find GPS coordinates in there. Sometimes there'll be maps and we can go and look for them in satellite imagery. But one of the things I've done especially is come into this app, which is called Wander, and it is a VR port of Google Street View as well as Google Maps. And I'll use this to find surveillance towers along the US-Mexico border. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate for you today. If folks are using Google satellite imagery for geolocation and open source intelligence, you'll be familiar with it, but there's a lot of reasons to use it in VR rather than on your desktop. Similarly, if you're using Google Street View, you'll be familiar with a lot of the different features, but it is a lot different when you're immersed in it and you're able to look around without dragging your mouse and you're able to very quickly go from one thing to another. So I'm just going to start by walking you through some of the just general features so you can understand what's going on. And then we'll jump around the border and I'll show you how we've done some of the research, and feel free to ask any questions as we go. So first, I'll just say that this is Wander. This is available for the Quest in the Quest store. So for the Quest 2, the Quest 3, the Quest Pro. But if you have a more sophisticated system where you're using Steam to power your VR, you can use Google Earth, which actually is a quite more powerful product for doing this because it does have 3D rendering of cities that has been very useful. When I bought my house during the pandemic and we couldn't visit it, I used Google Earth to go visit it beforehand and to check out our view and how the yard was situated. But it is not social, and it is a lot more expensive to have a gaming laptop and a headset. So I tend to use the Quest system. I have a Quest 2. I'm using the Quest Pro for this right now. And that is about it. So I'll go and get started. Sound good, Charlie?
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to just sort of move over here so you can see what the controls look like. So just to ground you, we are in San Francisco outside the Electronic Frontier Foundation's offices. You are able to bring up a version of the Earth, and you have this giant screen that you can move around. I'm actually going to pull this ridiculously close. And we can bring up the United States. And we can switch to satellite mode. And you can see here, anything that you see as a blue line is a place that you can drop yourself in Google Street View. But as you can see, we can come in pretty close. And if we pull it even far closer, it really does allow you to see Google Satellite in a much more detailed way than you would be able to do on your laptop computer, where you're confined to your monitor. In this, you can have like a movie screen size visualization or satellite mode. You can also come over here and you can turn user content on and off. So, as you probably know, Google Street View is a combination of two sources of data. First is the stuff that is captured by Google Street View cars that drive around with those cameras on the roof. but then people can also contribute their own 360-degree images. And that is actually pretty crucial because a lot of people with 360 cameras go to places that the Google Street View card does not. You can also sort of look at your hand, and there's the same sort of features. You can click info to see the address, and we can actually go back in time as well. So I'll show you, for example, so here's EFF in 2022, March 2022. If we jump back to 2021, you can see what our offices look like during the pandemic, where we had to block up our windows, and we were able to, have art come in. We could jump back to 2014. So I'm going to jump back even further when we first moved in. And then we could jump back all the way to 2007, long before, a good 6 years, maybe 2007 is too far to go back for this app. Let me try 2011. Oh, there we go. So this is 2011, before we moved into our building. You can see it was a different color, a different configuration. You can see there's surveillance camera out front. It's because this was a Planned Parenthood facility before we moved in. And you can even see if we turn over here, there is no giant gentrified apartment building. And now there is across the street. So it's kind of cool because you can treat it like a time machine. So any questions so far about just sort of the general functions of this?
There are currently no questions in the chat. Just making sure.
And just like oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a question about the jumping back in time and so on, and these are the two types of information that you have. Is this applicable for multiple countries, or is this only applicable for, say, the United States and a number of other countries?
Great question. So let me go ahead and show you what it looks like on the map. So again, everything blue is where the Google Street View car has gone. And so if we zoom out, you can see that, like, obviously Northern Canada is not very well represented because the Google Street View car didn't go out there. Whenever you see like an individual dot, that is somebody who has gone with a 360 camera and uploaded it. So you can see here, somebody has done a 360 camera on some sort of boat in Northern Canada. This is usually a pretty much higher resolution image, so it takes a little bit longer to load. But you can see we're able to see a little bit out in the middle of nowhere. But we can see, the representation is probably what you would expect in general for, based on the developed world and where infrastructure for cars is. You can see, like, we got pretty good coverage in, like, India, for example, but less so in Afghanistan. Pretty good in Thailand, less so in China. So it is going to be the same limitations that Google Street View has, because it is just Google Street View. I'm going to sort of jump back real quick to just show you one other feature. And just like Google Street View, we can just roll down the street by clicking this arrow and, just travel like we would. And if we wanted to jump over a block, I can come in here and I could be, let's zoom in here. So if I wanted to go to the alley on the other side of our building, all I have to do is click over, and you can see sort of the homeless problem that San Francisco is suffering these days. But yeah, so any other questions? And I can start showing you how we've done the research. All
Clear
right.
so far.
What's that?
Say it's all clear so far. Looks great.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump you to and just sort of show you a few things. So right now we are in San Diego. This is where the Pacific Ocean meets the border fence, and you can see the border fence over here. Now, this particular image, I believe, was taken by somebody's 360-degree camera as opposed to a vehicle, because as you can see, cars, this is not really particularly a street. A car would not have been able to get here. You can see Border Patrol vehicles over here. Over there is Mexico. This is actually called Friendship Park because back in the day, these gates here on either side would have opened up, and people from either side could have congregated and met each other and hugged and exchanged presents in this like little area. But that's been closed since the pandemic, and we don't expect it to be opening anytime soon because of the security situation and posturing of the US. But you can see some Border Patrol vehicles over here. And then right above us, this is called a remote video surveillance system, or an RVSS. There are usually two cameras on it, two camera rigs. So there's one on one side, there's another on the other. Usually there's a platform that's either a square or a triangle. We know that these cameras have electro-optical as well as infrared, as well as a laser, some sort of laser beam that illuminates things. And these can see for, up to 7.5 miles out. And you can see, so this one is definitely pointed out to the sea right now. And so it's looking for vessels that would be coming in. And we can't from here see where the other camera is pointed at this particular moment. But if we look over here, that's all Mexico. And one of the reasons I show people this is because if we wanted to see what was the other side look like, it would take us several hours to go all the way that way to the border crossing, wait in line to cross over, and then get a cab and drive all the way back. But in VR, we could literally just jump across the fence in 2 seconds. So let me bring up my thing. All right, so this is the Mexican side. As you can see, it's a lot different. In the US side, it's very militarized and empty. Here, it's kind of party time. Lots of bars, lots of restaurants. We do see some military personnel over here, but people are hanging out on the beach, eating elotes. They got your Instagram pose here, but place to pose. There's the tower, the lighthouse that we saw. There's a mural, and boom, there is the surveillance tower. You can see how it lords over this side of Mexico where people are just kind of minding their own business and doing their own thing. And clearly this is not a zone where people are trying to cross the border and camping out and showing up with caravans. This is just, a very social zone. There's a stadium right there. But you could just sort of really see in a way that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise very easily how different the two sides of the border is. One of the things I like to show, I'm going to take you to Nogales, Arizona, is just how this is one of the ways that this really opened my eyes, is that I would just come in, and I'm going to sort of show you on the map. I would just come in and I'd be like, well, where are these border towers at? And I would just look at these blue lines and see how close to the border I could drop myself. And then I'd literally just look around. So there you can see one remote video surveillance system right there. We turn over here, I could see one over there. And then if we look over here, you can see one over here. I'm going to jump over to the other side of this mountain over here. I'm going to move my thing here so I can see it a little bit better. So over here, I'm going to jump to the other side. So over here, that is that surveillance tower right here. But I try to go in here to just sort of demonstrate that these surveillance towers really are looking over communities. This is a US neighborhood where people just park their cars, live their lives, and yet they have multiple surveillance towers in their neighborhoods. To show you a sort of other way that I'm able to get a nice vantage point, so I'm going to go back here to this thing where we saw the 3 towers. So there's one we were just at. Here's the one that was right above us. We're going to jump over to the Mexican side of the border over there and look at this tower. One of the things that's interesting about the Google Street View car is that it does not necessarily get very close to the border on the US side, but it gets very close to the border on the Mexican side. And so oftentimes, if we're not able to see it on the US side, just hop over to Mexico where the roads go up to the fence, and then the Google Street View car has captured it. And so here we can see, again, another surveillance tower, quite literally positioned to look into people's backyards. Again, these are not drug smugglers or migrants or anything like that. These are just people living their lives who have to deal with the surveillance tower. One of the things I found amusing in going one by one and looking at some of these is that you come up with some really interesting scenarios that you come across. So for example, this is Douglas, Arizona, and the Google Street View car just happened to come by while a while a technician was servicing it. And so we can actually come over here and spend some time looking in the truck, seeing what kind of stuff is in the truck. You can see this guy messing around with it. And we can get a really good look at the equipment on there. So you can see the array of 4 cameras or 4 sensors or 4 projectors. I think the one on the bottom right is a searchlight. So the top 2 collect data, the bottom 2 transmit data. You can see the communications equipment. I'm going to jump back to Nogales for just one more second to show you how we're able to look at this in the satellite mode. So if I'm looking for these things, I'm often coming here and looking for things like this. So the fingerprint of these ends up becoming very clear. Often you see the platform of 4, you can see the various things coming off each side, but oftentimes it's the shadow that's more obvious. So if I come over here and we look at this one, you can see that on this one, the shadow is really the big tell on this. This may be a little bit harder to parse, but definitely we are looking for these kind of shadows to identify them. Yeah. So let me show you another one. So like, for example, this one here, I also show people, we were able to really only by coming in here and showing it to people in VR, they're really able to get the real sense of how these are placed in people's communities. Like here we have a tower, like that's like, you know, just outside the fence of somebody's backyard. Back here, you can see the border fence. The border isn't on the other side of the fence. There's just kind of wetlands after that. And then there's the river. So this is in South Texas, by the way, in Brownsville. But, you know, you can see like seeing it in VR is just much different because you can look around really quickly and see that there's a barbecue and then there's vehicles. You know, people, you know, have their sports cars here. And just putting it in this context is really important. So I'm going to show you another sort of example here. So this is another kind of tower. This one's going to take a little bit longer to load because, again, this is a 360-degree image that somebody has taken. And so it's higher resolution. So this is one of the Elbit Systems towers. This is the ones that the Israeli company Elbit makes and has sold to the United States. And then they use these towers to monitor the border with Palestine. We're in Arizona on Coronado Peak. It is very difficult to get up here. You have to drive up some roads, some dirt roads that are windy with a big drop off. But somebody came up here with a 360 camera and shot a photo of it. Now, at some point, a Google Street View car did come up here, and I'm just going to sort of show you the difference. First of all, also, there is where you can see the footprint of these towers as well. But like if we come and we look at what this looks like in Google Street View, it'll take a second, I think. Sometimes if it's so old that it doesn't particularly, the app doesn't particularly like it. So we may not be able to see it anymore because they just recently updated it. All right, I'm going to give up on that for now. But this image is actually the one I find really, really useful to be able to see. This is about as close as you can get in Google Street View to this particular camera because it is, these are mostly in very remote places. There's another one down here. You can barely see it. I just happen to know it's there because I've been there and I've seen it. But yeah, you would not be able to really tell the Street View that it's there. So one of the other, so the third tower I want to show you, so this is Southern California, is the Anduril Sentry. These are much smaller, very ironic as well, because we are using Meta Quest headsets, which previously was known as the Oculus headset, which was invented by a guy named Palmer Luckey. Palmer Luckey, since leaving or being fired from Facebook, started a security company. And one of the products is this border tower called the Sentry. And so we are actually using one technology invented by Palmer Luckey to investigate another technology invented by Palmer Luckey. But these ones are sprouting up all over the border. These often do not show up on Google Street View because they're so, I mean, not on Google Street View, on Google Satellite because they're so new. And sometimes the Google satellite imagery is not updated, not new enough. And so we often do just find these by cruising around in Street View. But these ones are also much smaller. They're about 33 feet high. they can see for 1.5 miles. And so one of the interesting things about knowing that they can only see humans for 1.5 miles and vehicles for 2.5 miles is that that's where they place them, every 1.5 miles. And so I'm going to jump out and back to satellite mode and show you. So you can see it's not there in this version. However, if we are to come back closer to this region, I'm going to grab a different one. We're going to grab this one. Okay, so we are at the border, and you can see there's a tower right there. And I'm going to bring up the map. The map keeps moving for me. Map. All right, we zoom in, and you can see that this one is a very, very particular footprint. It's got this kind of cloverleaf pattern of 4 platforms, and then the tower itself, and then usually 2 solar panels, again with those configuration of 4. Now, knowing that these are 1.5 miles apart, and knowing that they can only be placed where a truck can place them, like a truck can actually drive, we can actually go and just start moving along the border like this and looking for them until we find one. And so I'm just going to go up here, follow this path. Don't see one there. Going to come back down. We're going to move over here. See if we can see one up here. This one starts to get a little far, and so it may. I'm going to come back down a bit over here. And so I'll just spend a lot of time going through this and looking for towers. And because this is updated every once in a while by Google, I'll actually come in every like 3 months and look for like holes in my map. So boom, I just sort of followed it, found another one there. You can see there's this one actually has the 4. You can't see all 4, but you can see 2 of them in the tower, and then you can see the solar panels there. And so you can really just come in, and I have found that it's often a lot easier for me to do this in VR because I have this huge map and the footprints of these towers are so small that seeing it big like this makes it a lot more, it's just a lot easier to find them this way. So I'm going to show you a couple of other things. So this is Mission, Texas. And we can come here and we can see, when we talk about militarization of the border, this is exactly what happens. You see these Humvees, you see these camouflage things, you see a soldier sitting on a bucket with his long gun, and then you see a surveillance tower. This is called a relocatable RVSS. It's the new model of those first towers I showed you. And I want to show you this one because this is one where I can go back in time and really start to see some interesting stuff. So this is April 2023. So you can see that more recently they moved this camp away. If we go back to 2021, you can see that Border Patrol does like to park here, but they didn't particularly militarize it. We jump back to 2016, and this is where we see that the tower has actually changed. There was a totally different kind of tower there. We don't know what it is. It doesn't necessarily look like a surveillance tower, but you can see that we can tell that because of the date change, we know generally that a 5-year period where it must have shown up. I believe this probably went up in about 2020. Let me show you also what this looks like closer up as well, because
there is a question in the chat. Sorry, I was eating. The question is, does it integrate with maps in somehow so that you can place pins and later view them on maps?
I wish you could, but no. So this is something that I bookmark it so I can come to my thing and I can hit the star. It adds a favorite, and then I'll just like write it down later. I'll just lift up my headset or use pass-through and I'll make a note of where it is. So I wish it did have that integration. I'm trying to make a line of communication with Wander to ask for some of these features. However, I think they mean this more as an entertainment app as a open source tool, but maybe I can convince them. But yeah, so this is another one we can see a little bit more close up. and sort of get an idea of the scale of it, seeing what it is actually looking at. So we can see that it's looking at the border fence over here and some farmlands. Sometimes you get lucky and somebody has flown a drone with a 360-degree camera, and so you can get a neat view of things as well. So for example, we had seen some public records that CBP had placed a tower on public property in private property in San Diego near the coast, and we were trying to get a good look at it. And in street view, you only are able to see along this, and you're not able to see into private property. But because a drone went up in the air and was flying around, we were able to get a good look of that surveillance tower from above. And so we're able to see it right there. And I found that really fascinating. It was just really lucky that somebody had flown a drone with a camera up here. Some other sort of interesting things, we're able to come in and this was just, I just dropped myself by the border, did not see this from above, but I was able to get a good view of this kind of surveillance tower. The border is actually just beyond these trees. This is a school, or is it a school? It's a sports field for playing various sports, and there's a playground and a football field and a baseball field, and you can see that this surveillance tower is just like right above it, monitoring people, and you can see the cameras on top as well. Let me sort of show you some other things. Okay, so over here, we're in Sierra Vista, Arizona. All of this is a military base. And so beyond these houses, and you can see we have like ranch homes over here, but we can't really see what's in the military base. But we were looking for a particular surveillance technology that we knew generally where it was located in satellite mode. So this one is called an aerostat, and we can see the launch pad for it right here, and you can see this spy blimp in the middle of the launch pad. But when we go into Google Street View, we actually get to see it in the air, floating above us. And I love bringing like students and people into VR and putting them here and saying, hey, can you find the surveillance? And they look around and they look around and they look around, and they forget that Google Street View is actually a 360-degree capture, and you're able to see this. Now, we actually wanted to see one a little bit more close up, and so we went to the 6 locations in the United States to see which one we could get close to. And the Street View car actually came this close to one in Deming, Arizona. So we were actually able to see it on the ground. This is actually from 2014, but we could jump to 2023 and you can see another version as well. I actually used the 2024 version to show people because it's a little bit better exposed for seeing it, but you can see that the whole thing has changed. But we can jump back to let's see if we can jump back to 2019 as well. I'm not sure that this app is able to do further back than 2010 anymore. But you can see it didn't really change. There's one in Eagle Pass, though, that you can actually see that it changed the sign from the U.S. Air Force to Customs Border Protection, and otherwise didn't change anything.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
How often do you find that users are uploading like the supplemental like drone footage or additional pictures in addition to like do you think people are like updating this like maybe like once a month in this region, or is it sometimes like maybe a couple times a year? How often do you find that users add additional imagery?
It really depends on how popular a tourist destination some of these places are, or like hiking trails and how beautiful it is. Sometimes it's, maybe every year or every couple of years, just really depending on where you are. Sometimes like the one in Tijuana that I showed you, people are doing that all the time. The Tijuana San Diego one, because people are just there frequently. Unfortunately, there's not a good way to like, when you look at the map, to see how new they are. You just kind of have to click on each one to see when it was actually recorded. But the Google Street View car actually goes by a lot of these places a lot more often than you would think. And so I'm very often surprised when I come in and I'm like, oh wow, it's been there 3 times in the last 3 months. And so I'm able to actually see a lot of detail as things change. one of the other things that we're looking for are these smaller blimps that do video called tactical aerostat system. And I really want to be able to demonstrate how these are flying over people's homes. And if we go into satellite mode, we can't always see what the range is or what this looks like from people's homes. Where's my map? So, so for example, if we look at this one, I believe the you can actually see it flying in the air. So satellite view captured in the air right there. And I believe the platform for it is right there. And so you don't necessarily get a sense of how far it is or how visible it is and how much it can stray in, due to the wind and everything. Like this is a significant distance from the launch pad. And then you can see over here, if we go back to the map, at this point, it had floated almost directly above a residential neighborhood. Okay, so a couple other cool things. I'm going to start wrapping this up soon to take more questions, and I could show you some other stuff that it doesn't have to do with the border. But here we are in Yuma, Arizona, and I'm going to sort of stand in this position and hopefully, let me see if you can see. I think you can see. Can anybody on the video identify surveillance technology in this scene? Anybody want to take a guess just for the sake of helping the flow of the video?
Some sticks on hills?
No, those are all communication towers. So they are, these are not surveillance towers. It's possible there is one up there, but I believe these are all just for radio and broadcast and that sort of thing. It's actually a bit of a trick question. The surveillance is actually, I want to direct your attention to these two orange bollards by the side of the road. And we're going to roll up on them a little bit more. And you might look at these and you might say, wait a second, what is this actually protecting? Because there's already a guardrail there. What is it keeping people away from? And why is it on cinder blocks? And why is there a solar panel not far from it? And it's because they have placed automated license plate readers. You might know of these as automated number plate readers. They have placed one on either side of the road here to mask them. And this is really interesting. We only knew about the location of these because after we published our map, a user had seen these by the side of the road, went and found them again on Google Street View and sent us a picture of them. And then I was able to go in and really get a good look at like what they were able to capture, et cetera. And then just sort of looking around at the different details is quite clever what they've done here. I will show you a sort of similar thing that we found just by, these things here, your speed is 71. And there's another one right here, but if we roll up a little closer on it, we will see that right here is another license plate reader. And this one actually has one as well, capturing both directions. Now, we knew that CBP and other agencies had purchased these things, but finding them is a little bit more difficult. And so this is a Customs and Border Protection facility. And so we'll come to each of these facilities in VR just to poke around and see what is there. And I'll sort of show you a little bit more about how this works out. So if you haven't been to the US-Mexico border, there are these checkpoints everywhere. And generally you have to go through them and you can't stop. If you stop, it's because they have stopped you and they're about to search your vehicle. And so you really don't get the ability to go through and look through them very carefully for the various pieces of technology that they may have installed. But because Google Street View car has, you can take your time. So for example, we see that there's a surveillance tower right here. This is actually a very older model made by Boeing. And then we can just kind of roll through and see some various things in here. So we can come in here and we can see there is a license plate reader camera right there. And there's a license plate reader camera right there. And this is actually from July 2022. If I come in to 2023, we can actually see what the officers look like. We can see they've got body-worn cameras on their chest. Sometimes we can see what their lunch is. And we can just sort of roll through and just see what kinds of things like
which border crossing is this one? Is this like on like the Texas border, or is this on the...
Yeah, I'll tell you right now. So this one is, I believe, Arizona, or let me just check real quick. Where am I in the world? I believe this is an Arizona checkpoint. Yeah, so this is between Tucson, which is here in southern Arizona, and the Tohono O'odham tribal land. And so if you were traveling between the Tohono Reservation and Tucson, you are going to be passing through this checkpoint every time because this is the main road that people have to pass. I'll show you.
There's also another question in the chat as well.
Yeah.
It says, is there a way you found to best communicate what you found that also helps capture the way in which you found it? And then in parentheses says certain static photo layouts of different times / same location, video capture, etc.
So not really. I mean, you do have to do your traditional screen grabs. You can bookmark anything in here if you're doing it on your laptop. Like you can bookmark it in the app and you can bookmark it, but you can't take your bookmarks to your computer yet. Hopefully that's a feature they're fixing. But if you do it on Street View on your computer, you can grab the URL for any time, any framing, and then you can just have a series of those. And of course you can screen grab them as well. And that's typically what we've done is screen grab. I'm going to give you another sort of example of what I've used this for. So we're going to jump to a checkpoint in California. And again, we can stop here. We can see that there's a surveillance tower up here. But then we went through every single one of these and documented the license plate reader cameras. And so you can see when you go through the checkpoint, there's a camera there, there's a system here, and then there's another one here. But we can go back in time. And so this is July 2023. We jump back to September 2021. We can see that there's a totally different camera system. So we know that between 2021 and 2023, that they swapped these cameras out for a different model altogether. And again, we can come through here and look a little bit more closely at the technology they have in here. I'm going to show you one more checkpoint, which is a brand new checkpoint that they keep installing new technology in, and it really does help us understand a little bit more. And you can see some of these cars being searched over there. How these checkpoints function. So this one is in Falfurrias, Texas. This is brand new. This doesn't even show up on satellite mode. Satellite shows the old one, which was a bit south of here. But we can come through and we can roll through this. And again, we can see the license plate reader cameras. We can even see as close as, yeah, so we can see that. I think there's you can see the dogs smelling people's cars right here. You can see there's a separate version for trucks. We can see this guy up here. And we can look at him very close up and see mostly what kind of equipment is on him. So you can see that he has this body-worn camera there and other kinds of devices. Then if we roll up here, we can sort of get a better idea of their operations. So right here are the bays where they search people's car. Now nobody's car is being searched right now this is May 2023. But maybe if we jump back to December 2022, we can start to see what it looks like when people's cars are being searched. I'm going to actually look at this one because this one's really a better version. So we can see that there's some sort of cages here, but you can see CBP officers searching someone's vehicle right here. And we can also see where they detain people while they're searching their vehicles. So right there. What we can't see is what's going on in this cage right here. I imagine that's where they further detain people. But we can also see, as we move along, some of the other equipment they have in here. So they have these giant things to scan people's vehicles. So you can see that the vehicle goes through here. It's doing radar scans of everything. This is for a regular vehicle. Up here is the version for semi-trucks, for larger trucks. Now, one thing I'm keeping an eye on for my work is this tower right here, because I do not see surveillance cameras on it, fact, I don't see any equipment on it quite yet. And so I believe they are going to be putting surveillance cameras up there, and I want to map them. So I'm going to keep coming back here periodically as the Google Street View car comes through until they've actually put it up. Now, I would say that my techniques for mapping these, I'm going to actually go back to talking to Charlie. My techniques for doing this involves using public records, using Google Satellite on my computer. I have to switch between Bing Aerial and Google Satellite to try to identify these towers because they have different image sources and different times. And so one system might have, Bing might not, sorry, Google Street View might not have it, but Bing Aerial, possibly does have it. I have not yet really found a commercial satellite service that's really will sell me stuff at a reasonable rate that zooms in close enough to see the towers. But we do use a lot of public records as well. I do use VR, but we have gone there in person as well. We've taken 4 trips to the border now in person to document these. And going there first in VR to get a sense of what we're looking for and what these places are going to look like, totally invaluable to me. Especially once we map these out and we know where the gaps are and we go there in person and see what we're missing in those gaps. So that's pretty much like what I have ready to go on border stuff, but I'm happy to take questions or show you other features or show you other places. I'll go anywhere in the world that you want me to go. Yeah.
I think one thing to note in terms of like archiving what you're seeing is also you can take videos inside the quest as well. So you can kind of document your whole journey in here like I am right now, for example.
That's good.
That is one point that we didn't cover. I also think it's really useful to see scale of items that you can't really see in Google Street View in the same kind of volume. Any questions?
Yeah, I guess if you can, because we're seeing this as like a sort of 2D sort of screen on our computers here. So can you describe a little bit what it's, I guess, like viewing it within the VR environment?
Sure. So, I mean, it is still 2D in here because it is 360 photographs and they're not 3-dimensional photographs. Your brain really does kind of put it together so it still feels a little bit 3D. If you do use Google Earth, there is 3D modeling and you can fly around or change scale. So you could be the size of Godzilla if you want, marching around Tokyo, which is pretty fun. Maybe not from like an open source investigations perspective, but just for a general enjoyment of VR perspective. But what I guess the big difference here is that you do feel like you're standing here and you're able to look around in a very natural way and you're able to notice things in the way that you would notice things standing on a street as opposed to dragging around with your mouse and zooming in, zooming out. I guess also when you're looking at the scale, when I do it on my computer, it's really hard to tell how big something is. Because when you're zoomed in, it looks at one size, you zoom out, the cameras are very like wide lens, it depends on your screen. In this case, you do have to like look all the way up and look all the way down. You can also sort of see what other people are seeing depending on where they live or where they're positioned. And so being able to move around very quickly also changes the experience over desktop. It's really hard to explain, Charlie. It just feels, it's hard to explain a feeling. But you do like, your brain starts processing the sun like it's the sun,
Yeah.
If it's something's windy, it almost feels like it's windy in there. Your attention is totally focused on what you're looking at because you don't have your phone to look at, you don't have your computer to look at. I don't know, Charlie, how is it for you? I've been in here doing this in VR for like 5 or 6 years now, so it's maybe a little bit different for somebody who's been trying this for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a VR 3D world in the way that a lot of the VR games are developed to be. Like, I'm not saying that it feels like, I don't know, we're in space or anything like that. But it does it does feel a lot more immersive, and you do feel like you're standing, even though I'm actually floating right now, it does feel like you're kind of standing in the space. I can definitely understand better the separation between this barrier here and the one up on the hill there. The scale and the space of things are a lot more easier to understand when you feel like you're standing in it rather than kind of just looking around. Your eye does trick you and make you feel like it is 3D. Looking at that building over there, for example, looks 3D to me, even though I know it's not. And that's the advantage of being in the VR, I think, is being able to look at something like you're standing there. So, for example, some of our investigations where we've looked at individuals' final moments, being able to stand on the street that they were on and being able to see how far away a car might have been, for example, in an easier and more immersive way, might make kind of investigations going forwards a little bit easier. Obviously, this tech, as mentioned, is accessible on Steam, but also primarily accessible on the Oculus or the Quest. But we do have one in-house if people want to kind of explore.
We also have another question by Ben in the chat, which is, if you could scale up the use of this tool for your own work at EFF, either for what you do now or what you want to do in the future, what do you think would be the ideal number of people using this to work? And then also, if you had to give a percentage, how much time do you think you save in VR Street View versus desktop?
Well, dealing with the second one, I mean, I'm not sure about saving time because I definitely find that time disappears once I'm in here, and I really do enjoy being in here. And even, I think one of the things that is just, I'll find myself going on digressions when I'm in here. So I was hanging out in the border looking for towers, and I saw a huge cloud of smoke in the distance. And I was like, what is that huge cloud of smoke? And so I just followed it and followed it and followed it in Google Street View, and it just turned out a Google Street View car happened across a wildfire in the desert. And I was just like, wow, that's fascinating. Or there was one part of it where, the Google Street View car was clearly being chased by Customs and Border Protection vehicles. And Border Patrol finally caught up with this Google Street View, and that's where the Google Street View stopped. And I found that fascinating as well. So I don't know. It does, I don't know if I'm saving time per se, as I am just having a totally different research experience. And I don't really know how to answer the scale question because, I mean, I only have a team of 2 people at EFF, and I'm the only one really doing this border mapping, except I do bring interns, and the interns put on headsets and we do this stuff together. So I'm not really quite sure. It's really going to depend on what you're using it for. And, it is just another tool. What I end up doing with this a lot is I spend a lot of time bringing people into VR, like I'm doing today with Charlie, in order to show them what I'm talking about. Because when we're talking about the virtual wall, people just have this very abstract concept of it. And they don't really understand that people live in these places, that it's in cities, it's not just in the middle of nowhere. They don't necessarily know what this equipment looks like. Maybe they've seen a picture of it, but they don't understand the context of it. And so taking people on tours in VR like we are now has just been really a very good experience for getting across the message and the research that we have collected. And so far, I've taken multiple journalists through this. I've taken many students through this. We took Errol Morris, the Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker, through this experience. And then in a couple of weeks, there are 2 geographers who are using our map to photograph these in real life. And I'm going to take them through South Texas so they can see all of these locations before they go there in person. So they can see, is this a road they're going to be able to drive on to get to this tower? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That looks fine. This, if it's rainy, is going to be impassable. And so I find that people are finding it very useful to do it in VR to really understand it a little bit more. I'm not really sure how to answer how many people in my office it would be useful. We ended up with 4 of these headsets, but we've never used all 4 at the same time. And it's really just largely me doing it because I'm, one of the main people doing open source investigations, just by the nature of the type of organization we are.
How many people maximum can you fit in Wonder VR on a,
I
in a
believe-
party?
I believe if I look, I believe it's 5.
5.
Yeah, I believe it's 5 or 6, but they may have increased that recently. I'm not really sure. But I think they can only fit as many people who can fit around you in a circle.
One of the things I'm really interested in using this for is potentially using it for visualizations as well. If we've done a story on a particular area and I can then jump in using this headset and take kind of almost like a 360 video of the area that we've reported in, then I can place, it might be useful for visualizations and for people's understanding.
Yeah, let me when during the early weeks of the invasion of Ukraine, I was, hearing about everything that was going on, and I was like, what are these places? I'm only seeing pictures. And so it was really interesting and a bit heartbreaking to come in and look at some of these places that had been through Street View. Anybody like who's researching Ukraine on the call and want to pick out a city to look at?
I suggest we just go to the capital.
Okay, so we'll go to
Yeah.
Kiev.
Sorry,
So-
somebody's just suggested Mykolaiv.
How do we spell that?
Mykol.
OL? There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna pop me in here. Like it's just gonna pick some random place in the city. But we can come in here and you can see there's, not every street has been covered, but like most, right? And all of these like little circles you see here are like, 360-degree photos that people have taken, which are of a variety of talent, to be honest. But yeah, so we can see that we're in Ukraine. If we wanted to, come by down the water, we can, see various areas. And so it's been actually pretty heartbreaking to see, what looks like, some days you'll come in and let me see if I can find like a good, like let's go down near like a sort of more of a shopping area, residential neighborhoods. But if you go to like a busy area where there's people just doing shopping and enjoying their Starbucks and stuff like that, and you're just like, wow, this is like, a war zone that could, look exactly like where I live. Yeah. So you're able to do a lot in Ukraine. But unfortunately, if you're doing like, let's take a look at like Israel. So you can see like, we start to lose quite a bit in Gaza, and you can see we're missing a lot in like the Nablus area, but you might be able to get some things interesting, particularly if people put in 360 images. Sometimes you can see a bit. Oh, and sometimes people take photos of people's houses and in stores and then upload them. So oftentimes you'll find stuff in museums. But yeah, you can see that the Google Street View car has not been through Gaza. And so we're losing a little bit here. Somebody maybe walked around with the camera. Let's see what happens if I go here. I have not spent a lot of time in exploring outside of the US for these purposes.
I mean, I do love that there's like this inside the stores and restaurants and places, because like there's oftentimes images that we're trying to geolocate, and it's from like a photo inside a place. Because there was that case recently, right? That was in the Discord, where they were trying to geolocate that painting and found it inside this like restaurant. And so I think it's really useful because it like you might just see it out the corner, but probably getting this like 360 might even make it much more recognizable. Be like, oh yeah, that is definitely the painting from this picture that was inside this building that's here. So,
but this is 2017 Gaza right here. But I do wonder whether people might get a better idea of what is happening and, what is actually being destroyed if they could spend a little bit of time, just sort of seeing what people's lives are like, because I don't know that anybody really has any, the general zeitgeist in the US for sure. Like people don't really have like a good concept of what Gaza is or what it looks like. And neither do I. I mean, like I've never been there. And I don't know. It will be very interesting after, when there's more imagery from this to be able to compare. But it's just unfortunate that there isn't as much documentation in some of these areas. And it's kind of just sort of interesting, and it just sort of shows you the difference in resources between, Israel and Gaza and type of access, in the sense that the Google Street View has not gone there and has not gone to a lot of places. Any other questions or any other places I can go and show you?
I had a question about does it just automatically update when new, I think you mentioned that new footage is available, but you have to check it basically. You're not going to know unless you check it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you don't know. Like it's the same as Google Street View. Like Google Street View does not let you know when they've uploaded stuff or they've done stuff. You just have to keep coming back.
Amazing. If all the questions are done, maybe we can wrap, Dave. And thank you so much for showing us around and demonstrating this. It's super cool. Hopefully over the next few months, the wider Bellingcat team can have a little go in my headset as well and have a look themselves. But thank you so much for taking us around and for agreeing to have this recorded so that we can share it with our Discord community as well.
Excellent. All right, I'm gonna shut this out, but maybe I can just say goodbye to everybody in real life for a second.
Please do, please do.
All right, I'm gonna exit this, because if I don't, I'm gonna look like my head broke and my arms broke. I was testing this out with my wife yesterday. I took my headset off and she was like, "Oh my God, what happened to you? Your head just fell off." So I'm gonna exit out of this.
Okay, bye.
All right. Well, it was good meeting everyone. And if I can ever give you more advice or I can help with anything, just let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks.
everyone for joining. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.